600 bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and we're coming to you live from Manila and the island nation of Maldives. Here's Steffi. Hello, Steffi.
Hello, Alma. And I am Steffi D1, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. Myanmar's ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been accused of breaking a colonial-era official secrets law, according to her lawyer, as Britain ramped up sanctions against the junta and the UN Security Council condemned the deaths of hundreds of civilians.
The Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP's Maritime Patrol of Pagkakaisa Banks last March 30 have resulted in the discovery of illegal man-made structures constructed in some of its features.
Presidential advisor for entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion, believes that the only way to balance health and economy amid the global health crisis is through the immunization program.
It is not really the solution.
And Senator Manny Pacquiao took a stand against hate crimes that have targeted Asians and other minorities in the United States. The Philippine senator tweets, "Stop attacking Asians who can defend themselves," he said, "Fight me instead."
First, to the ongoing crisis in Myanmar, ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been accused of breaking a colonial-era official secrets law, according to her lawyer, as Britain ramped up sanctions against the junta and the UN Security Council condemned the deaths of hundreds of civilians. Aung San Suu Kyi and other members of her National League for Democracy, or NLD, have been detained since the coup, and the military had earlier accused her of several minor offenses, including illegally importing 6 handheld radios and breaching coronavirus protocols. Her lawyers say the charges she faces are trumped up. Her chief lawyer, Kin Maung-za, told Reuters by telephone that Aung San Suu Kyi, 3 of her deposed cabinet ministers, and her economic advisor, Sean Turnell, an Australian, were charged a week ago in a Yangon court under the official secrets law, adding he learned of the new charge 2 days ago. Now, those found guilty under the law can be jailed for as long as 14 years. The newly unveiled charge came amid growing international outrage over the February 1 coup and the military's subsequent clampdown on protesters that has left at least 535 people dead now. After 2 days of back-and-forth negotiations with China, Russia, and the rest of the Security Council, members on Thursday unanimously expressed deep concern as the rapidly deteriorating situation in Myanmar.
Myanmar's ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi was smart and charming as always during a court hearing, says one of her lawyers. During the hearing, only one member of her legal team, Daw Min Min Soo, was allowed to speak with her via video conferencing in a police station in Naypyidaw. Suu Kyi has been charged with breaking a colonial-era official secrets law, her lawyer said on Thursday, the most serious charge against the veteran opponent of military rule.
Min said when he saw her on the screen in the video conferencing, Aung San Suu Kyi seems to be in good physical condition, and she was, as always, she was smart and charming as always. She demanded to arrange a meeting between her and the lawyers, the defense lawyers, a private meeting to give her instructions to the lawyers and to discuss about the case without any outside interference like the police or like the other forces.
In a related news, London earlier announced sanctions on the Myanmar Economic Cooperation, or MEC or MEC, a conglomerate controlled by the military that Washington has already blacklisted. In addition to sanctions, London will also stump up $700,000 towards UN Security Council efforts to document serious human rights violations in Myanmar. Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said in a statement, quote, 2 months on from the start of the February coup, the Myanmar military has sunk to a new low with the wanton killing of innocent people, including children. And then he added the UK's latest actions target one of the military's key funding streams and impose a further cost on them for their violations of human rights, unquote. International powers have sought to pile pressure on the military by hitting its sprawling business interests, which include the lucrative jade and ruby trade.
Internet firms were ordered to cut wireless services provider Ooredoo said in the latest move to suppress communication. Dozens of UN member states subsequently issued a statement denouncing such shutdowns and attacks on freedom of expression, expressing deep concern over the plight of media workers. In addition to the communications blackout and physical violence, the New York Times reports Myanmar's military is using surveillance drones, phone hacking devices, including European-made iPhone hacking tools, and software for tracking personal computer security as part of the widespread digital offensive against the opposition. A group of ousted MPs from Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy, or NLD, who have been working underground against the junta, have announced plans for a new civilian government in the first week of April. They said Myanmar's military drafted 2008 constitution was cancelled, and on Thursday, a group of protesters burned a pile of copies in the street of Yangon.
In another blow to the junta's business interests, 2 military-owned supermarkets in Yangon were set ablaze overnight, and 2 more international companies cut ties because of the crisis. The Ruby Mart and the Gandamar were covered with billowing smoke. The cause of the fire remains unknown, but the incident follows calls to boycott businesses affiliated with the junta after the February 1 coup. Protests and the security forces' tough response continue, and in Monya in central Myanmar on Thursday, a 31-year-old protester was shot dead, while 10 others were wounded, according to a rescue worker. 1 person was also killed and 6 others injured in Mandalay. A rescue worker and a doctor said this. And the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society said security forces had been targeting first responders, with Asia-Pacific Director Alexander Matthew labeling the incidents as unacceptable.
Around a dozen protesters gathered in Yangon's Tamwe township to burn copies of the 2008 Constitution. This comes a day after a group of ousted parliamentarians acting as an underground parallel administration known as the Committee Representing Pidang Sul Utah announced the military drafted constitution.
Go ahead! Go ahead!
Now, fears are also growing that a broader conflict could erupt in a country plagued for decades by on and off fighting between the military and the rebel ethnic armies. Several of Myanmar's 20 or so armed ethnic groups, who control large areas of territory, mostly in border regions, have voiced their opposition to the coup and crackdown. Three of them, the Tang National Liberation Army, the Myanmar Nationalities Democratic Alliance Army, and the Arakan Army, on Wednesday threatened to join the protesters' fight against the military. Two other outfits, the Karen National Union, or KNU, and the Kachin Independence Army, or KIA, have already stepped up attacks on military and police in recent days. In another escalation since Saturday, the military has also launched regular airstrikes targeting the KNU in eastern Karen state. Local media outlet Karen News reported that 11 people were killed in the airstrike in a gold mining area of the state on Tuesday, but AFP has yet to independently confirm those details.
Thailand is bracing for a fresh influx of methamphetamine following the coup in neighboring Myanmar. The Thai Narcotics Bureau has already seized more than 80 million yaba pills in the past 6 months, a record haul partly blamed on a supply glut caused by the coronavirus pandemic. But now the United Nations warns of an even bigger deluge as Myanmar's legal economy tanks following weeks of nationwide unrest and strike action following the military takeover.
พวกที่ค้ายาเสพติดผิดกฎหมายเขาจะมาหลายๆรูปแบบนะครับแฝงมาในการเป็นชาวบ้านหาปลาบ้างนะครับโดยใช้เรือหางยาวพอสบโอกาสถ้าปลอดคนหรือว่ามีคนลาดตระเวนเขาจะก็นัดส่งยาโดยทุกวันนี้มันการโซเชียลมันเจริญโทรศัพท์แจ้งกันแล้วเขาก็ส่งแล้วก็พวกได้รับใช้เวลาไม่นานแล้วก็ขึ้นรถกลับไปเลยเขาก็ขนยาขึ้นมาพักไว้ที่ริมตลิ่งแล้วก็ประฐานโดยก็มีรถของฝั่งไทยนะครับรถฝั่งไทยรถฟอร์จูเนอร์โดยมารับยาขึ้นไปพอดีเขาขึ้นไปกำลังขึ้นยาเสร็จแล้วครับกำลังจะออกไปพอดีเจ้าหน้าที่ตำรวจที่สพบันเดือลาดตระเวนมาเจอพอดีขอตรวจค้นเขาก็ขับหนีทีนี้ก็วิ่งไล่ประชิดแล้วก็ประกบแล้วก็จับได้นะครับได้ผู้ต้องหา1 คนยาบ้า5 ล้านเม็ด
The ethnic armed groups that make money from this trade either by allowing their territory to be used or taxing the trade are looking at the current situation in Myanmar as an opportunity to reinforce their position, to reinforce their territory and they need money to do that because they're going to need arms. They're going to need to pay their small armies, and maybe grow those small armies. So they're looking at how can they make money and how can they make it fast while the Tatmadaw is distracted. In times of crisis, they tend to scale up the production, and we very much expect that in the near term, I'd say 2 to 3 months from now, we would probably start seeing increased flows out of Shan State. And right now, the easiest way to get them out of Shan State is through Laos. Through Laos, back into Thailand in the northeast. It's basically the gateway for access into the rest of Southeast Asia at the moment. We heard figures yesterday that were 5 tons of ice since October, 70+ million yaba tablets since October. These are numbers that are just shocking. And 5 tons of ice is worth a fortune if it gets to Australia or Japan or whatnot. And we just heard from the military this morning that it's for international markets, the ice, largely. So it's really straight through here. The idea is to get it out through Thailand.
Synthetic drug production is already the #1 revenue source for several insurgent groups and militias in lawless pockets of Myanmar close to the border of Thailand and Laos. The frontier traversing the three countries makes up the Golden Triangle that has for decades been the hub of Southeast Asia's lucrative drug trade. The recent supply glut has kept the street value of a meth pill in Bangkok at rock bottom prices, 50 baht or 1.66 US dollar per piece. Methamphetamines, more potent crystallized forms, normally get sent on to wealthier overseas markets such as Australia and Japan, although pandemic transport bottlenecks have disrupted that trade. Heavier patrols along the Myanmar border have not deterred traffickers, with Thai authorities estimating that around 3/4 of illegal drugs entering their territory are now routed through Laos. The United Nations warns of an even bigger deluge as Myanmar's legal economy tanks following weeks of nationwide unrest and strike actions following the military takeover.
For some entrepreneurs, their voice is their business. Voice-over talents, voice actors, voice artists, voice coaches, they belong to the creative service industries, thriving business accelerated by the global pandemic that requires work and collaboration to be done remotely. This week, we will hear the titan of Filipino voice acting and the highly sought-after voice director and trainer to share his views on the topic, Your Voice, Your Business.
Kung ano ang kaya mong ibigay ng libre, doon ka maaaring kumita ng malaki. Ano yon? Siyempre, skills mo, time mo, yung heart mo, yung puso mo sa ginagawa mo.
Wala first of all, mabuhay ang sambay ng Pilipino.
Alam nyo, sabi ko sa iyo, huwag nyo akong subukan.
Diba? Sabi ko, bawal ang droga, kundi patay ka diha.
Pocholo de Leon Gonzalez, known as the voice master of the Philippines, will be joining us in this episode of Open for Business.
Stop attacking Asians who can't defend themselves. This and opposed Senator Manny Pacquiao punctuated with the hashtag #StopAsianHate. Senator Pacquiao took a stand against hate crimes that have targeted Asians and other minorities in the United States. Take a look. Senator Pacquiao tweeted a message against discrimination in 4 different languages. He said, "We have one color in our blood. Stop discriminating. Love and peace to everyone." #StopAsianHate, the Filipino senator said. "Stop attacking Asians who can't defend themselves. Fight me instead," he added in Tagalog, Chinese, and Korean, alongside a photo of himself against images of elderly Asians who had been attacked in the U.S. and their perpetrators. He also added, "We have one color in our blood, so stop discriminating." New York police on Wednesday charged a suspect in a brutal videotape assault of a 65-year-old Asian-American woman believed to be of Filipino descent that sparked outrage amid a surge of anti-Asian violence in the U.S. Police identified the man as 38-year-old Brandon Elliott, who was released from prison in 2019 on lifetime parole for stabbing his own mother to death in front of his 5-year-old sister back in 2002. The attack, which took place on a sidewalk in broad daylight in Midtown Manhattan on Monday, was caught on CCTV footage from inside an adjacent building and showed bystanders seemingly looking on without even intervening. The video also shows a man who appears to be a delivery worker watching the attack unfold from inside the building. He is then joined by two other men, one of whom closes the door rather than coming to the woman's aid as the assailant walks away. The victim, whose identity has not been released but of Filipino descent, was hospitalized with multiple injuries, including a fractured pelvis. She has since left the hospital, according to local media. Manhattan prosecutor Cyrus Vance said Elliott faces up to 25 years in prison if convicted. New York has more than 1 million inhabitants of Asian descent. In the week of March 15 to 21, police recorded a total of 9 hate crimes, up from 3 in the same period of 2020.
In other news, images from a recent Philippine military aerial patrol show several reefs in the disputed Spratly Islands in the South China Sea, where over 200 Chinese ships are scattered. China has claimed the vessels are fishing boats sheltering from bad weather, but Manila insists they are from Beijing's maritime military, frequently accused of conducting covert military operations in the area.
当前呢，在地区国家的共同的努力下，南海的局势总体是稳定的。那么，刘鄂礁是中国南沙群岛的一部分，向来是中国渔船的重要的避风点。中国渔船在该礁附近海域避风，完全是正常之举。我们也知道呢，有一些势力，总是在想方设法呢，要挑拨中非关系。我们也相信菲方呢，能够明辨是非，不会上当受骗。
Meanwhile, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP's maritime patrol of Pagkakaisa Banks last March 30, have resulted in the discovery of illegal man-made structures constructed in some of its features. During this patrol, we were able to document man-made structures that were built on some of the features, and these structures are illegal, according to AFP Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Cirilito Sobejana in a statement on Thursday. Pagkakaisa Banks is under the jurisdiction of the municipality of Kalayaan, Palawan, while Julian Felipe Reef is a large boomerang-shaped shallow coral reef at the northeast of Pagkakaisa Banks and Reefs, or the Union Reefs, located approximately 175 nautical miles west of Bataraza, Palawan. Earlier, the National Task Force West Philippine Sea, or NTFWPS, expressed concern about the Philippine Coast Guard sighting report where around 220 Chinese fishing vessels believed to be manned by Chinese maritime militia personnel were sighted in line formation at the Julian Felipe Reef last March 7. He added that the AFP, through the Western Command, regularly conducts maritime patrols in the West Philippine Sea as part of its constitutional mandate to protect the country's sovereignty and sovereign rights. He also assured every Filipino that AFP efforts continue to dutifully perform its mandate to protect and advance our national interests in the area.
In other news, a Vietnam Airlines flight attendant who was handed 2 years suspended jail term for for spreading the coronavirus, Vietnamese state media said Tuesday. Dong Tan Hao broke his 2-week home quarantine requirement and met 46 people after working on a repatriation flight from Japan in November. The country's official government website said the 29-year-old was convicted of spreading dangerously infectious diseases in a court in southern Ho Chi Minh City on Tuesday. According to the metropolis official mouthpiece, Pak Nuat Tan Ho Chi Minh, Hao broke quarantine rules a week after arriving home, and a COVID-19 test showed he was positive for the virus several days after. Before the test, he had met friends and took part in a contest at a Ho Chi Minh City University, media report said. He spread the virus to 3 people according to the city mouthpiece, which added the livelihood of more than 2,000 city residents were affected, with 861 people put under mandatory quarantine and 1,400 others locked down at home. Prosecutors said House moves cost a total of material loss of $190,000 US.
In other news, a Filipina who was sacked as a domestic worker in Hong Kong after being diagnosed with cancer, a case that exposed the vulnerability of low-paid foreign workers, has passed away, according to a friend, confirming this on Wednesday. Baby Jane Alas, 40, was told she had stage 3 cervical cancer 2 years ago and was promptly fired by her employer, who cited the illness as the reason for termination. The single mother of 5 instantly lost the right to health care and had to regularly apply for visa extensions as she navigated Hong Kong's legal and immigration systems while battling her cancer. Supporters crowdfunded her treatment, and Alice had successfully overcome her cancer, but she died on Saturday from complications related to a kidney infection. Baby Jane passed away suddenly last weekend at her home in the Philippines, according to Jessica Cutrera, an American national in Hong Kong who led the crowdfunding campaign and took Alice in. Alice was awarded 30,000 Hong Kong dollars or $3,860 US damages from her former employer, who hailed from a wealthy Hong Kong family of Pakistani origin, for sickness allowance, medical fees, and wages in lieu of notice. She returned to the Philippines last year, but had hoped to return to Hong Kong for work. Hong Kong's Equal Opportunities Commission also took up her plight earlier this year, launching a separate discrimination case against her former employer. Cutrera, who also employs Ala's sister, said the family hoped to continue pursuing the discrimination case on behalf of her estate. Nearly 370,000 domestic helpers work in Hong Kong, and most are poor women from the Philippines and Indonesia, working for low wages, often living in grim conditions, and sending much of their wages back home to support their families.
Meanwhile, the cockpit voice recorder from a crashed Indonesian jet has been retrieved in good condition, officials said Wednesday. More than 2 months after the airliner plunged into the sea, killing all 62 passengers and crew. The CVR records flight crew conversations and could offer critical clues about why the Sriwijaya Air Beijing 737-500 dived around 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet into waters off Jakarta just minutes after takeoff on January 9.
Namun setelah 1,5 bulan pencarian dengan menggunakan penyelam dengan segala peralatan yang kita punya tidak membuahkan hasil, dan kami istirahat 1 minggu, terus kita mengevaluasi kira-kira metode apa lagi yang bisa kita gunakan di dalam pencarian black box ini. Terus kemudian karena memang area di situ banyak lumpurnya. Dengan kapal TSAD ini kita melakukan pencarian, yaitu dengan ada penyedot lumpur kerjanya seperti vacuum cleaner. Kita menyedot sampai kedalaman 1 meter di area 90 kali 90.
COVID voice recorder dari puing-puing. Apa yang dilakukan tidak mudah karena dimulai atau didahului dengan kita mencari secara teknis di mana penyelam itu ke dasar laut. Tetapi memang banyak sekali puing-puing sehingga metodenya dirubah dan nanti KNKT sudah menemukan banyak hal dari flight data recorder. Tetapi flight data recorder itu akan paripurna apabila dilakukan satu penggabungan apa yang terjadi di kokpit, yaitu pembicaraan antara pilot dan co-pilot.
Pada siang hari ini, juga kepada semua yang hadir.
A preliminary report last month into the crash said crews on previous flights had described the jet's throttle system as unserviceable and that it had been repaired several times before its fatal final flight. The report said a catastrophic throttle malfunction and possible human error were among the factors being considered. The 737 had sharply deviated from its intended course just before it dropped. Despite appeals from air traffic controllers, the crew, including an experienced captain, did not respond to questions about the sudden change of direction.
To Vietnam now, where Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc has decided to allocate around $53 million from the central budget to the Ministry of Health to buy COVID-19 vaccines and carry out its vaccinations. This is supplementary funding for the ministry, which is responsible for drafting and submitting to competent authorities for approval of an overall plan on COVID-19 response for this year. The plan includes detailed information on purchase and use of 150 million doses of vaccines. As of 6:05 p.m. on Thursday, Vietnam confirmed 2,617 infection cases, including 2,359 recoveries and 35 fatalities.
take one step further and face the impossible. Time to search the unknown and fight for the truth. Time to overcome boundaries and connect the world. It's time for DW News.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back. We're still coming to you live from Manila in Cambodia. The United States will seize products made by, or rather Maldives. The United States will seize products made by Malaysia's top glove after concluding the firm uses forced labor, according to officials, dealing a fresh blow to the world's biggest surgical glove maker. Take a look. U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, had already banned gloves from 2 of top glove subsidiaries last year after saying it suspected the company was committing labor abuses. It went a step further on Monday, announcing it had sufficient information to conclude that Top Glove uses forced labor. The federal agency said it would seize any gloves manufactured by the firm at U.S. ports of entry. Top Glove shares were down more than 5% following the news. Announcing the initial ban last year, CBP said it believed there was evidence of debt bondage, excessive overtime, and abusive working and living conditions in Top Glove's production processes. The company said Tuesday it was seeking to resolve the matter with U.S. authorities.
Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion, believes that the only way to balance health and economy amid the global health crisis is through the immunization program. During the Kapihan sa Manila Bay Virtual Forum Wednesday, Concepcion said the back and forth lockdown and reopening of economic activities and staying in the middle of lives and livelihood is extremely difficult for Filipinos.
Because, wearing a face mask, face shields, and social distancing are very important to maintain and contain the infection level. It is not really the solution to our economic problem today. The health problem has to be solved, and the health problem can only be solved with these vaccines arriving. So, and that's why we took a very proactive stand, and we said, let's be aggressive, let's be more supportive. I know we've donated so much to the government, especially these larger corporations, on many of their efforts. But let's take a very proactive, aggressive stand on really helping our employees and trying to protect them. So that's all emanated from that. And I'm glad that if that were Secretary Galvez, I don't think we would have had a tripartite agreement. No? The agreement took some time, but then it was crafted very well, which was basically a win-win for all parties concerned, including the AstraZeneca as the pharmaceutical company. So then, for fast forward till today, this year, in 2021, the law was created, which protects formally through our law that the indemnification of all parties involved. Now, the challenge here, and people are saying, and I know this event is to discuss the president's statement on private sector can purchase vaccines at will. We'd love to do it, but no pharmaceutical company will be able to sell you. Especially today, because there's just a shortage of supply at this current time. Yes, you can see India is putting a 2-month-old on exports of vaccines. We have spending distributors that are planning to bring vaccines on the third and fourth quarter. Hopefully, that 2-month moratorium on exports will have been done by then. But you can see that every country is fighting for supply, because as we see this infection level rising up, especially in the Philippines and other countries all over the world, this is the only measure we can take right now to protect our people. And as we manage the health situation through the deployment of vaccines, then we can see us being able to at least keep the economy open and running.
He added the private sector has formalized the request to the government to focus half of the vaccine donation to Metro Manila, particularly for micro and small entrepreneurs who are not capable of buying their own vaccines. Vietnam's economy continued to expand in the first 3 months of the year, officials said on Monday, thanks to the government's success in containing the worst of the coronavirus. Let's listen in. And while the 4.48% rate given by the General Statistics Office was below forecast in a Bloomberg survey, it was better than the same period last year, and the government said it hoped to chalk up annual growth of 6.5% for 2021. Vietnam has long been one of the best performing economies in Asia and was one of the few in the world to expand last year owing to strict pandemic measures, including massive contact tracing and mandatory quarantine. The office said that to remain on target, Vietnam must speed up vaccination efforts, providing businesses support packages and accelerate public investments projects.
Malaysia has paid Singapore over $76 million compensation following the cancellation of a controversial high-speed rail line between the neighbors. After years of stop-start negotiations, according to officials, the 350-kilometer railway was expected to cut travel time between the city-state and the Malaysian capital Kuala Lumpur to 90 minutes from the 4 or more hours by car currently. But the neighbors scrapped the project in December after failing to agree on changes proposed by a new Malaysian government, which had taken power after the fall of a short-lived reformist administration. The countries have had fractious relations since Malaysia expelled Singapore from a federation back in 1965, ending a brief and stormy union of the former British colonies. Malaysia paid 102.8 million Singaporean dollars to Singapore to reimburse costs incurred for the project, and both governments said this in a joint statement. They said the amount represents a full and final settlement in relation to the termination of the bilateral agreement to develop the line. Singapore signed the deal to build the bullet train line in 2016 with the government of then Prime Minister Najib Razak, but its fate was thrown into doubt after Najib was defeated in elections 2 years later.
Tayong mga Filipino, likas na palabati. Sanay rin tayong makipagkamay. Pero dahil na rin sa COVID pandemic, isinusulong ang pagbati na hindi na kailangan pang makipagkamay. Ang pambansang pagbati. Ito ay ang pagdampi ng kanang palad sa gitnang bahagi ng dibdib, kasabay ng bahagyang pagyukod ng ulo o paibabang tingin at pagsambit ng mga salitang nagpapahayag ng pagbati, paggalang o pagpupugay. Pagkatapos nito ay ang pag-angat ng ulo ng nakangiti at nakatingin sa mata ng binabati. Pambansang pagbati, pagpapakita ng paggalang, kababaang loob at pagiging sensero nating mga Filipino.
Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. The giant futuristic-looking three sculptures at Singapore's Gardens by the Bay turned their lights off at 8:30 p.m. for Earth Hour, joining other cities around the world in marking the event.
And the most important thing is that it raises awareness amongst everyone. It brings out the importance of what we should be doing for the Earth, where we are headed. And by doing activities like switching off the lights or turning it all off, it gives you a time to introspect, basically to understand where we've been so far, what should be done, how much more should be done. So while Earth Hour is a good concept in itself, it's not an end itself. There has to be a lot more that needs to be done.
Significant. 1 hour is not enough to, for us to remember that climate change is actually a problem, per se. So I don't really see it as very significant, but maybe it is a right step towards awareness to understand. To be very honest, it's not very important. Because honestly speaking, I don't even remember per se that today is explicitly Earth Hour. Because
cities around the world were turning off their lights Saturday for Earth Hours, with this year's event highlighting the link between the destruction of natures and increasing outbreaks of diseases like COVID-19. Starting off the event at 8:30 p.m., the skylines of Asian metropolises from Singapore to Hong Kong went dark, as did landmarks including Sydney Opera House. The annual event calls for action on climate change and the environment, and this year's organizers said they want to highlight the link between the destruction of the natural world and the increasing incidence of diseases, such as COVID-19, making the leap from animals to humans. Experts believe human activities such as widespread deforestation, destruction of animals' habitats, and climate change are spurring this increase, and warns more pandemics could occur if nothing is done. In Singapore, people at the waterfront watched as skyscrapers went dark, and in a nearby park, Gardens by the Bay, a group of futuristic-looking tree sculptures had their lights turned off. In Thailand, Bangkok's ultra-popular Central World Mall counted down to 8:30 p.m. before its exterior glass displays went dark for an hour, though inside the shopping center appeared to operate as usual.
In other news, the U.S. ambassador who made a splash in Vietnam by making a rap video is getting a promotion as the top diplomat for Asia under President Joe Biden.
Time for introductions are at hand. Hi, my name is Dan. I'm from Nebraska.
Daniel Crittenbrink, a career diplomat who speaks Chinese and Japanese, was nominated by Biden to be the Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia and the Pacific, according to a White House statement. Crittenbrink became an internet sensation last month during Tet, the Lunar New Year that is Vietnam's most important annual celebration, as he put out his own rap video to send his greetings. In a performance that combined both astute diplomatic messaging and a healthy touch of irony, Crittenbrink appeared strolling the streets of Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City in his suit, wearing headphones, accompanied by Vietnamese music stars. Despite his sense of humor, Crittenbrink has a serious background. He was previously serving as the #2 at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing and as the top White House aide on Asia policy under former President Barack Obama. Now, Crittenbrink's nomination, which requires Senate confirmation, comes as tensions mount between the United States and China on issues ranging from human rights, trade, to Beijing's assertive military moves.
Thailand's Pati Tavatanakit fired a stress-free 6 under par 66 to take the first round lead Tuesday in the year's first golf major, the LPGA ANA Inspiration. played college golf at University of California at Los Angeles, didn't let any major championship nerves get the better of her, grabbing 6 birdies without a bogey for a one-shot lead over Chinese veteran Feng Shanshan and Ireland's Fiona Maguire. After 2 front-line birdies, Patty rolled in 4 coming home that included 3 in a row at 13, 14, and 15, and a final flourish at that 5-18. Patty topped a crowded leaderboard that saw a dozen players within 3 shots of the lead, a group that included world number 1 Ko Jin-young of South Korea, Thai sisters Aria and Moria Jutanungarn, and 2-time major champion Anna Nordqvist of Sweden.
Thank you, Steffi, for keeping me company today. I hope you have a safe and a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alma. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asia nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I am Steffi Bihuan from EBC Maldives Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Steffi. You have a great vacation there. A very nice place in Maldives. I'm Alma Angeles. We'll see you back next week. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
Big city boy, then 3 years ago I moved to Hanoi.